One thing that I definitely want you to understand and recognize, and I think you probably did already. What year was this first passage written? 1758. All right, so not necessarily like a lot of us in this room, but generally speaking, we see something published 1758, we get scared, we get afraid, we go, I'm not going to be able to do this. You certainly can do this. You take a look at like the synthesis sources that we've done. Civil disobedience was 1849. Mary Wollstonecraft was 1792. This is older. This is 1758. And it's not getting Gavin to have a fond appreciation for 18th century or 19th century literature, but it's the idea that you can read it, you can understand it, you can get the argument, you can pick out the characteristics that are going on within it. You'll certainly have at least one passage that's going to be older than 1900 on an AP exam, but the hope is it's not something to be terrified about. You're also going to have 21st century. They have to have things from the 21st century. They have things from the 20th century, and then they'll have something that's going to be at least a little bit older. So you will get a kind of variety of text. We're going to read through this, fairly quickly. Some of you marked stuff up on your passages. Some of you didn't. So we're going to kind of talk about, what are things that you're recognizing, word choice, diction, parallel structure, whatever the case may be, syntactically while we're going through the reading, and simply understand what's happening. The passage is based from DebtorsPrison, written by Samuel Johnson. This is not coming from an actual AP exam. This is one of the, bazillion practice type test things that I have out there, but certainly would be modeled coming from an AP. What's a debtor's prison? That seems too simple of an explanation, but that's pretty accurate. That'd be it. Anything to add to it?
When people didn't pay their credit thing, they would get thrown into prison so they could pay it back. But because they were in prison, they couldn't pay it back.
It's pretty hard to pay it back. Now, family in theory could, but chances are if you had to take a credit in the first place, the family's probably not going to be able to do anything for it. Ruby, anything to add to it? And the big thing, too, is who's determining, you going to prison? The person who you owe the money to. So, I let you borrow $1,000, you don't pay it back. I'm like, yeah, you're going to jail. See ya. And there's not a release date until the credit is paid. So it's not that you're going to be in jail for 2 months or 3 years. It's an indefinite, length of stay that could be happening. It's like you could be in this room for the rest of your life. But I would never allow that to happen.
Great.
As long as I'm here, that won't happen.
I would run through that door, Mr. King.
Sir,
Jump out that window.
as I was passing lately under one of the gates of the city, I was struck with horror by a rueful cry which summoned me to remember the poor debtors. The wisdom and justice of the English laws are, by Englishmen at least, loudly celebrated, but scarcely the most zealous admirers of our institutions can think that law wise which, when men are capable of work, obliges them to beg, or just, which exposes the liberty of one to the passions of another. The prosperity of a people is proportionate to the number of hands and minds usefully employed. To the community, sedition is a fever, corruption is a gangrene, and idleness an atrophy. Whatever body and whatever society wastes more than it acquires must gradually decay. And every being that continues to be fed and ceases to labor takes away something from the public stock. All right. What would be any words, phrases, lines that elicit some type of reaction?
I had the prosperity of a people is proportionate to the number of hands and minds usefully employed.
Because there ended up being a question about that line, or what you remember while reading you underlined it?
I don't remember.
Okay, because there's a question about it. But, I mean, certainly, like, prosperity of people is proportionate, and even, like, with employed, I think you could argue there's definitely what happening there.
It definitely wasn't that.
You have alliteration that is taking place. Is certainly going to be one thing. So yeah, that's going to kind of like jump out. What else?
I underline community sedition is a fever, corruption is a gangrene,
You remember why? Either works. It could be parallel. You could call it parallelism, parallel structure, parallel syntax. All those things are basically going to be interchangeable. They're parallel, unlike my line, since I got a little bit of a dip going on. But yeah, you see something like that syntactically. Alliteration certainly going to be syntactically. You got that parallelism going along. We good with like gangrene and atrophy and all that type of stuff as to what it means?
I was confused on the atrophy question.
Well, like fever and gangrene are illnesses, so I kind of assumed that atrophy would be one as well.
And gangrene, if you're unfamiliar with it, I don't remember if it gets mentioned directly like an all quiet on the Western Front, but it would be happening on all quiet on the Western Front. If you don't have proper footwear, you can start to get gangrene infection, and you have to have amputation and things like that taken. Yeah, it starts, and then like bacteria and all that kind of stuff goes on. So it's certainly not a good thing. And yeah, you're right. Like illness is taking place. Notice with atrophy, what you start to have in that following line, whatever body and whatever society wastes more than it acquires, gradually decays. Those things would be going with atrophy. If you don't do something, atrophy starts to happen like when your muscles literally just waste away. So if you just, if you're bedridden and your muscles stop working because of, too much idleness, you could have atrophy starting to take shape. Whereas if you're constantly in motion, big muscles start to develop. Some of us have that problem.
What do you mean?
Some of us don't.
They have to scan me for weapons when they see these guns.
Oh my god.
Okay, Dad.
That was
Yeah,
all.
yeah, you know the
Such a
openings
dad
are
joke.
You just put him this.
We got to string him on that shoulder. Oh, that's your arm. My mistake.
Oh,
That's dad.
Dad, he is.
The best part
throw
was
you out
the
this
best part was he
window.
did look. I
I'll
thought
throw
I
you
thought
out
for a
of this
second.
window. Keep talking like
Anything else? All right. Where are we? Like probably location wise.
England.
England.
England specific. I mean, we don't know for sure.
London.
London, Mike.
Most likely, probably going to be London when it talks about gates of the city and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, oops.
It's always London.
But we know that we are in England. Maybe we're in Sheffield. Mix it
Or
up a little bit.
Manchester.
Well, I was going to say Manchester.
What's it called? Bathwater? Bath salt. That's the place in England.
Bath.
There's Bath.
Bath.
Yeah.
Oh yes, bath salts, my favorite location.
Did you read The Landlady like in 8th grade?
Yes, I do.
The one I think that was in Bath.
The
I think that one.
Landlady?
Roald Dahl.
Oh, I remember that. I remember that.
She poisons them with tea and then
Oh,
stuffs
she, like,
them.
I remember
stuffs-
the guy
Yeah,
took a train.
that's the landlady.
That was
A
freshman.
train to
I think.
Bath, and I thought
That's
that
what
was
it
really
was.
funny.
That's what it was.
Almost as bad.
And then you asked if there was a town named Shower, and your English teacher rolled his or her eyes. The confinement, therefore, of any man in the sloth and darkness of a prison is a loss to the nation and no gain to the creditor. For the multitudes who are pining in those cells of misery, I just like that line, cells of misery. I'm going to circle that for me. A very small part is suspected of any fraudulent act by which they retain what belongs to others. What's fraudulent?
Not.
Fake.
Immoral.
Yeah, it's like dishonest. So if you could be guilty of fraud if you were trying to cheat someone, if you're trying, embezzlement of money could end up being fraud. You could have, fraudulent tax returns and things like that where you are purposely trying to trick someone. Usually money gets involved with it. The rest are imprisoned by the wantonness of pride, the malignity of revenge, or the acrimony of disappointed expectation. Based on what Anastasia was saying before, I would probably be highlighting this part as well, because what's going on? We got that parallelism again, the wantonness of pride, the malignity of revenge, the acrimony of disappointed expectation. If those who thus rigorously exercise the power which the law has put into their hands be asked why they continue to imprison those whom they know to be unable to pay them, one will answer that his debtor once lived better than himself, another that his wife looked above her neighbors, and his children went in silk clothes to the dancing school, and another that he pretended to be a joker and a wit. Notice we kind of have, again, that parallelism is starting to kind of happen again with the way that these parts are set up. Some will reply that if they were in debt, they should meet with the same treatment. Some, and again, I don't mean that as a, boy, you missed that one, there's the door, we'll see you, in 3 months from now. As I was passing lately under one of the gates of this city, I was struck with horror by a rueful cry which summoned me to remember the poor. He's going off on his little jaunt and telling us this is the site that kind of reminded him of it. It's a layup in the sense that it's not interpretive. It's not one of those Morgan's focused on the word style or connotation with the other ones. It's pretty much as straightforward as it gets. In the first passage we did, there was one where it talked about the first couple lines would be parallel to like a foot race. where it talked about pace was slow and all that kind of stuff when we did earlier on. Sometimes you'll get questions where the answer hopefully is pretty direct. If the answer is screaming out to you that it is, a specific response, that they owe more than they can pay and need therefore give no account of their actions. Some will confess their resolution that their debtor shall rot in jail, and some will discover that they hope, by cruelty, to wring payment from their friends. Since poverty is punished among us as a crime, it ought at least to be treated with the same lenity as other crimes. The offender ought not to languish at the will of whom he has offended, but to be allowed some appeal to the justice of this country. There can be no reason why any debtor should be imprisoned that he may be compelled to payment, and a term should therefore be fixed in which the creditor should exhibit his accusation of concealed property. If such property can be discovered, let it be given to the creditor. If the charge is not offered or cannot be proved, let the prisoner be dismissed. From a writing standpoint, from an argument standpoint, this is pretty important because what's happening within this paragraph? I mean, we got a problem here. We're recognizing there's an issue here with the debtors' prisons.
It's kind of like his resolution.
So he's kind of given a way to try to fix it. Yeah, a solution or resolution to the problem. And I simply say this in the sense that, on like a DRQ type thing, you might identify there's a problem with something, which is all well and good, fine. But if you're going to identify a problem, make sure you offer a solution to it. So if you get a question, something about, fixing the school day, you don't want to go, school starts too early, it's the worst, I don't get enough sleep, yada, 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 all this stuff go on, but not offer some type of solution. If you think there's a problem, great, just make sure you try to fix it. Doesn't mean it's going to work. Maybe Morgan's solution's not going to be practical, but at least you're offering something out there to be evaluated and that you're at least thinking about that as opposed to going on the attack all the time. Many of the inhabitants of prisons may justly complain of harder treatment. He that once owes more than he can pay is often obliged to bribe his creditor to patience by increasing his debt. Worse and worse commodities at a higher and higher price are forced upon him. He is impoverished by compulsive traffic, and at last overwhelmed in the common receptacles of misery by debts which without his own consent were accumulated on his head. To the relief of this distress no other objection can be made but that an easy dissolution of debts, fraud will be left without punishment, and imprudence without awe, and that the insolvency shall be no longer punishable, credit will cease. The motive to credit is the hope of advantage. Notice that line. The motive of credit is the hope of advantage. Vanessa wants to borrow money from me. Why should I give her money?
So you can make
Think
it
more
more.
money.
So I can charge interest. There can be a sense of power or authority. You owe me money, so I'm the one in control. I might even realize that she can't pay it back, and I still get more control because off to jail she goes. So, the motive to credit is the hope of advantage. You're trying to take advantage of someone, have some kind of power over them. Commerce can never be at a stop while one man wants what another can supply, and credit will never be denied while it is likely to be repaid with profit. He that trusts one whom he designs to sue is criminal by the act of trust. The cessation of such insidious traffic is to be desired, and no reason can be given why a change of the law should impair any other. We see nation trade with nation where no payment can be compelled. Mutual convenience produces mutual confidence, and the merchants continue to satisfy the demands of each other, though they have nothing to dread but the loss of trade. It is vain to continue an institution which experience shows to be ineffectual. We have now imprisoned one generation of debtors after another, but we do not find that their numbers lessen. We have now learned that rashness and imprudence will not be deterred from taking credit. Let us try whether fraud and avarice may be more easily restrained from giving it. Boom. Now you got it. 1758. Look at that. 261 years later. Makes sense.
Around.
Why not?
Well, like, it kind of does. I kind of, I thought it wasn't bad. It wasn't fun.
You're not going to know every single word.
Yeah.
But that's going to probably hold true for whatever kind of article you take a look at. There's probably going to be terminology that is going to be, I don't want to say cryptic, but it might be outside of your comfort zone. But if you can take a look at it and go, okay, he recognizes that this is a problem, it's not fair, there needs to be some kind of change to the way the system is working, that puts you in position to probably be able to fight your way respectably, to kind of get through the questions. And that's all that we're and the reason we're run with it, go with it, take it for what it is, and then move on to the next question. Don't 3 words, so that's good.
Well, at least, because they're negative.
spelling.
We're taking a look right here. He that trusts one whom he designs to sue is criminal by the act of trust. The cessation of such insidious traffic is to be desired. So, the answer choices that folks are usually kind of looking at this point is can I get enough of it to kind of make sense? I don't think question number 1 would be worded this way on an AP exam because I can't recall ever seeing something where they kind of do in modern terms what would this kind of look like, but it's still taking a look at overall like main idea or purpose. So even though that type of wording may not be there, the main idea concept of do you understand what's happening certainly would. So of these, which would be the best modern parallel to what Johnson is taking a look at? E, credit card company could put you in jail for failure to pay your bill. Take a credit card, it's a type of debt. You'll pay it back with interest, hopefully. If you don't pay it back, off to jail you go. Yeah, that would be the parallel, that would be the match that we're taking a look at. So your freshman year of college, when you're walking on the campus and you see the little table set up and they're going to offer you a free t-shirt as long as you sign up for a credit card, unless you really need a shirt. I mean,
You don't have to use the.
you might not have much money,
Always
so,
cancel the credit card.
pardon?
You can always cancel the card.
And that, well,
You
what
don't
you
have
want to
to use
do, sign up for the credit card. Take the shirt, because you always need extra shirts. Put one small purchase on the credit card. We're talking like $15. Pay it, then cancel it, cut it. Because you need to use the credit card to get your credit. So while Mrs. Kane went, you're full for all those Visa t-shirts that I had, my credit score's higher than hers, Michael.
Really, you're the winner here.
Yep. You can bring that up tomorrow. You can remind her.
I will.
Okay.
You have a better ratio.
That sounds weird. Johnson's style demonstrates use of. Hey, one of these we've mentioned a lot already.
Yeah.
Syntax.
Did you put A?
I actually did not.
Did not.
I didn't.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah.
D?
Yeah. No.
No? C.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
correct answer for this one is parallel syntax. All right, number 1. So that one is A. Do you remember what you put? No idea.
It was probably A.
That one didn't like stick in your memory bank. Here's the thing with C and D. D has been a popular answer so far, and it tends to be kind of, historically when I've done this one. What do we mean when we say style? What do we talk about with an author's style?
Like how they rate.
Yeah. Why are you having this like oh moment?
Because verbs are not part of system.
Bless you.
But it's the
They-
present tense.
They can be,
Not usually though.
but I would agree they're usually not. Okay, so like active present tense verbs. Your independent reading journals looking for active verbs, not looking for the passive verbs because that's the is, the was, the have, and all that kind of stuff going on. While it potentially could contribute towards style, it does tend to be more of a grammatical type thing, a mechanical thing. Folks are going to use verbs pretty much no matter what. So it's not something that's really going to distinguish one author from another. You're not going to go, ooh, that's the passive voice writer, that's the active voice writer. It's not really a stylistic thing quite as much. The vivid adjectives and adverbs you certainly could throw out there. I think people sometimes go with C because they'll go, those were fancy words. I don't know what they mean. They seem like adjectives and adverbs. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. A lot of times they ended up being nouns. But the one that he does keep coming back to quite a bit is that parallel syntax, and that is something that tends to be stylistic because that's a writer's choice to frame it in that way. So that style concept is really what's going to kind of draw that attention towards the parallel syntax over those other ones. The look on your face was like wonderful because you went like, ah.
I should have known that. I don't know what I was saying.
You know what? You should have.
I'm so surprised I picked up on. I usually don't.
I just saw the semicolon.
Well, and he does go semicolon crazy over there.
I did.
Not that like this is why you should thank me for it, but I think as we do start kind of reading, you start to pick up on some of those stylistic things a little bit more. It's like the to be verb thing. You know, no one really likes eliminating them, but the more you go through it, the quicker you start to get to kind of pick up on it and whatnot. So I think because a lot of writers go with that parallel syntax, it's something that you just recognize. The Payne passage does it as well. She does a whole lot of parallel syntax, parallel structure that's kind of happening. First 4 paragraphs, all the following contribute to the central tone except 2 things. It says except, so we want to find the outlier. What would be like a general tone term that we could use for this passage, besides positive or negative?
Dark, gloomy.
Yeah, that'd be, gloomy, angry, critical, can't say negative.
She said connotation.
She did, she threw that out there, but.
Negative.
So definitely, it's not happy. Gangrene, zealous, corruption, malignity, rueful. So of those, what would we certainly align with negative connotation, angry?
Angry.
Okay,
Corruption.
gangrene, not good. Corruption, not good.
Malignity.
Which, if you're not even sure about malignity, mal is bad, malevolent, maleficent.
Oh, it's Mel, which means.
Yeah.
She's got big horns on her head. She's bad. And then rueful. So the only one that's left, zealous, which
It just doesn't make sense there.
Well, it doesn't match. And so when you're going with an except, that would certainly be something to take a look at. It would be a good idea to double check how it's getting used in line 7. The word that comes after zealous in line 7 is admirers. So usually admirers isn't going to go along with like that negative, dark, gloomy, rueful kind of connotation that we have going on, but it kind of affirms why number 3 is going to be the answer. Number 4, it's a layup. Doesn't mean no one missed it. I don't know if anyone did, but it's about as straightforward as it gets.
I thought it was a trick question.
A layup, that's something that my daughter missed like 8 times yesterday. Oh, it was ugly. I knew it was going to be ugly going in.
I overthought this one.
What'd you
Never
put?
missed a life in my life.
I'm not trying to be mean to you.
I don't want to say.
What should you have put?
See.
C.
Okay.
Tendency to take walks in London.
That's what I.
It was C.
Hi.
Oh.
She's like, you had me like saying, what'd you say? It's like it's a lamp. I'm like, oh, I
I
definitely
picked that.
picked it. I'm gonna be that guy.
Paralysis by analysis, where you try to make everything more difficult than it has to be.
I thought it was.
I think it's the by his tendency.
Yeah, the tendency part, I
It
got
never
it right,
said
but I
you
skipped
did
it and
off.
came back.
I was like,
She said
this seems too simple. That can't be right. So
Is that questionable?
it was right.
5, the word atrophy most closely evokes which of the 7 deadly sins? So atrophy, we said, means to basically to waste away, to idleness. A sloth is the best animal at the zoo because it just sits in that milk crate in the primate house.
There's some, I love them, but they don't.
And that's why my daughter has a sloth t-shirt.
Baby sloths are
They have like bear sloths too. Columbus Zoo has some kind. I think it was. I think it was called. I think it was called a bear sloth.
Red pandas are no.
Now, I will admit, number 5, you may not be familiar with 7 deadly sins. Okay, so you could kind of start to have the alert meter going off. You can assume if a question like this were to come up that all of the options given would in fact be deadly sins. It would just be going which word best aligns with it. But it's not going to go greed, lust, pride, envy, and then like some term that's not going to be, one of those sins. Sentence 6. This was the one that you underlined because I asked, if it was maybe with the question. The prosperity of a people is proportionate to like the number of hands. Basically says that the debtorsPrison commits a double wrong, and that it does what? So what would be like a 2-prong issue that would be taking place? Feeling good for A?
Yeah.
So deprives the country of its citizens, and if the citizens are in jail, what can they not do? Return the assets to the creditors, so that's why that answer is A.
If you really
That's
like
3 in a
somebody,
row.
couldn't you just give them a
2 in a
loan
row.
and know they're not gonna pay it back and just buy them?
In this context, yes. I mean, assuming they asked you for the loan,
We'll talk about that later though.
No, no.
They'll, like,
Yeah,
get a
like-
loan.
Number 6 we did, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Number 7, and you know that I'm not a fan of process of elimination, but if you see that except word coming up, you kind of have to do process of elimination. Paragraph 5 is that paragraph that's at the bottom of the page and then moves on to the next one. So Johnson seeks to understand what purpose this law serves. Why would we imprison people who owe money? He discovers that people will answer with all of the following reasons except. So which one of these would not be a reason why people would imprison? If those who thus, so I'm just reading that paragraph. If those who thus rigorously exercise the power which the law has put into their hands be asked why they continue to imprison those who they know to be unable to pay them, one will answer that his debtor once lived better than himself. Does that knock out any of these options? Okay. So, the debtor once lived better than himself. I'm going to quash the pride of those who live better than me. So A is out. I got my wrong pen going. There we go. Another, that his wife looked above her neighbors, and his children went in silk clothes to the dancing school. That's still reaffirming A. And another, that he pretended to be a joker and a wit. Okay, we're going to punish the fool. Some will reply that if they were in debt, they should meet with the same treatment. Okay. Some, and this one is a little bit of a time question, some that they owe no more than they can pay and need therefore give no account of their actions. Some will confess their resolution that their debtors shall rot in jail, and some will discover that they hope by cruelty to wring payment from their friends. E gets knocked out. What's left is B. So that's a question where it's like a page flipper if you haven't separated your packet, because you're literally looking at the answers as you go through it, but you can kind of check them off one at a time. Doesn't mean they're always going to go in that chronological order. Once B got skipped, the answer must be B. You certainly want to read through that paragraph just to make sure. 8 we already answered. What's he doing with paragraph 6?
B.
I think we said offering a solution, but it outlines the solution with the wording that we have here. He's giving a way to try to fix this problem. 9 is the question that everyone dislikes, because usually there's 3 answers that people are kind of muddling over with it. The word insidious in line 69 most closely means. In line 69, you said B? That's one within themselves. One of them is going to be dishonest, B, which Tabitha just mentioned. So I'm putting check marks next to those once I get there. Maybe. Yeah. Cruel, dishonest, loathsome.
At least I picked one of those.
Yeah.
So you're on the right track.
Yeah.
Anyone feel better about any of those choices compared to others?
I'm all in on A.
You're all?
I picked cruel, but I think it's just wrong.
It says hold on.
I'm going all in
What's
on
it, going in order, what's it mean to be cruel?
Like cruel.
Be
Me.
not really have a,
Like me,
like
it's
don't really
like
have a hard.
It sounds like you two said like me.
oh, yeah.
So
I
you're
think
trying to
it's more-
inflict harm,
I
like you're
think
being
it's more
mean.
like being mean, not being like. It's like being mean on purpose.
It's like taking
Yeah,
mean a step.
there's-
Dishonest is like
Yeah.
lying.
There's an intent to cause some type of harm. Could be physical, could be mental. Dishonest, lying. What about loathsome?
No,
It's just like you're the
Like
worst.
jealous.
I hate you. I loathe you.
So, loathsome is there's like a sense of disgust that's going along with it. All right. So, he that trusts one whom he designs to sue is criminal by the act of trust. The cessation of such insidious traffic is to be desired. This insidious traffic is going to be the traffic of money back and forth and people going to jail and all that kind of stuff. Is the act of people, I shouldn't say the act, is the movement of the people back and forth cruel? Is the movement dishonest? Is the movement lying? Is the movement loathsome where there's disgust? Yes. So the connotation of them is all very similar to one another, so the answer ends up being E. But the nuance of it is, okay, the traffic isn't going to be cruel. The traffic itself isn't dishonest. It's not being personified. But the traffic, the existence of it, it is something that people would loathe, where it is going to be of disgust. it's a very subtle little thing. So that's not one where you would like be beating yourself up if you missed it. And it's one if you're going, yeah, that was my thought process, then we look at you as if you're lying because we don't believe you.
I'm on the opposite of a hot streak right
I've got some
It's
water.
chilly in here.
I've got some
You feel
water.
that chill in the air? It's okay. Next to last paragraph, Johnson essentially compares.
C.
That's so.
now. Come on, please. Give me this one at least.
I don't know.
We see nation trade with nation where no payment can be compelled. A.
Back up.
Yeah, I thought it was cute, so I thought it
And 11, I think, is fairly simple. And again, not judging anyone, but the author's use of we in the last two paragraphs is employed to you. It's a collective pronoun. You're looking for that collective solution. So you recognize the need for a collective decision that's going to work for everyone. And then the last one, it is a bit of a direct answer, but it might be one that kind of could slide through the cracks for some. Fundamentally, Johnson is seeking legal circumstances that provide for a court hearing where?
B.
E. E. E.
B.
I must have done really bad on the second batch.
So that's 12. That's the since poverty is punished, that paragraph 6. There can be no reason why any debtor should be in prison, but that he may be compelled to payment. Such a term should therefore be fixed in which the creditor should exhibit his accusation of concealed property. If such a property can be discovered, let it be given to the creditor. If the charge is not offered, cannot be proven, then the prisoner gets dismissed. So if they have hidden assets, they should be made to relinquish them. All right? So tomorrow, well, and here, go to this question right now, because the very last one, 13, since we're talking about it, in a fundamental way, Johnson finds this whole issue of the loans paradoxical. Which of the following statements most clearly defines that paradox for him?
Where's that at?
I'm 13. I jumped to the end just because of what Annalise was asking about. Like, couldn't you like send someone to prison then for a loan?
It was really cool. It was A or E for me.
I said C.
You're not a good company.
I was wrong.
You got it right. You got it right. Look, you circled it.
And then I'm going to move that circle.
No.
No.
Oh.
He that trusts one whom he designs to sue is criminal by the act of trust.
Both criminals.
That's why it's.
So trust.
I mean, yeah, I saw trust twice and I was like, oh, okay, well that seems kind of like ironic.
Because
Maybe
he's
that's
trusted
it,
him to
but
pay
that.
He that trusts one. So yeah, I'm trusting you to pay it back. But what is my intent? To sue, because I know you're not going to be able to pay me back. I am the one who is criminal by the act of trust. So trust would not be a criminal offense typically, or like something that you would associate with a criminal, but I am trusting you not to pay me back, which is why I'm going to be able to trust that I'm going to be able to sue you. It doesn't make sense. It's paradoxical. But within the reality of how this is set up, that's part of the system that certainly. Look at the pain passage, which some of you can empathize with after taking an AP multiple choice. This one's certainly going to be much more recent, but I think there's still probably going to be some aspects to it which could prove a little difficult when it comes to interpreting the questions. We'll run through that one first tomorrow, and then I'll give you your Scantrons on your way out.
Must have done a lot better on pain.